Christina Feldman says, there is no greater love than the immeasurable friendliness that can embrace all beings, all events, and all experiences with unshakable kindness. There is no compassion greater than the fearless heart that can turn toward suffering and pain, tremble with empathy, and live with the commitment to end the causes of anguish. There is no greater happiness than inwardly generated by joy and peace. There is no equanimity more unshakable than the profound poise of the liberated heart that can meet the world of ungraspable conditions and events without being shattered. Threaded throughout the entirety of the Buddhist pathway of awakening are the teachings on cultivating the boundless heart, immeasurable kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. These qualities are referred to as the Brahma Viharas. And the Brahma Viharas refers to the sublime or noble tenor of these qualities. Vihara originally comes from the word for monastery, or the place that we abide and make our home. We are encouraged, whether standing or walking, sitting or laying down, or whenever we are awake, to make kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity the home of our heart. This is the noblest way of living in this world, here and now. And the Brahma Viharas are relational qualities. They are the foundations of all respectful, healthy, and dignified societies, communities, families, and relationships. Kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity are virtues, wholesome qualities that are foundations of all ethical thought, speech, and action. They are qualities to be cultivated in all moments, in the midst of all conditions and events that touch our lives, the lovely and the unlovely, the challenging and the easeful. They are pathways of awakening and liberation, and encouraging us to investigate anguish and its origins, and to cultivate the path to end of struggle and discontentment. These ennobling qualities are also the embodied expressions of the awakened heart, describing the deepest emotional and psychological freedom and maturity of a human being. When these qualities are brought to fruition, they are described as immeasurable, without conditions, and unshakable. They are the landscape and embodiment of liberation. They are also called the heavenly abodes. And in reality, these abodes are not independent of each other. They are intimately interconnected, so that one does not exist without the other. And it's not a linear process. So you might see it written out where it goes loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity, as if you have to go through each one to get to the bottom one or the last one. But what it does, it builds the capacity, your muscle, to hold. So if we start with an opening with loving kindness, as we did this morning, as the day goes on and in our life, we build the capacity to have compassion for ourselves and for others. We build the capacity to truly have joy with someone else's happiness. And we move into a place of being able to be with what is. And the practice of being with equanimity is a culmination of all the Brahma Viharas. It is what it is. It is also the most subtle of practices, and also called the sublime, which I love that word, the sublime. Thich Nhat Hanh has said Maitri can be translated as love or loving kindness. And some Buddhist teachers prefer loving kindness as they find the word love too dangerous. But I prefer the word love. Words sometimes get sick, and we have to heal them. We have to use language more carefully. Love is a beautiful word, and we have to restore its meaning. Amit Ray says, we are all so deeply interconnected, we have no option but to love all. Be kind and do good for anyone, and that will be reflected. The ripples of the kind heart are the highest blessings of the universe. And when we think about all of what's going on right now, we need all the support and skills and tools that we can cultivate and utilize and develop to get us through some of this insanity and this suffering that feels so overwhelming and so hopeless at times. And it seems like in this country, with the recent hurricanes, and then Trump's comments, and then we can just go down the list and name different things that are happening in this country. But this happens to people all over the world, all the time. And for some reason, or not for some reason, but for now, it isn't landing in our doorstep. And how do we want to hold it? And how are we challenged? And what do we want to do? We can actually train ourselves and transform the climate in which we live. We can practice being more loving, more aware, more conscious of whatever we want. And we can practice in retreats or while driving in the supermarket checkout line. We can practice it right here, right now. We can practice it when we leave this place and whomever we walk into. We can practice when we get in our car, when we get out of our car. I think you get the message. If we practice kindness, then spontaneously we will start to experience more and more kindness within us and from the world around us. Metta is a selfless wishing of happiness and well-being for others. And the near enemy of metta is a greed or attachment, since happiness and well-being could become coveted. So if I want what you want, then I'm not really being happy or happy for you, because I'm craving. Now I may admire this woman's socks and really like them, but that doesn't mean I have to have them, and I'm not going to lose sleep or my world doesn't end because I don't get them. I might dream about them and think about it, but if I don't have the socks, it is not the end of the world. It is just my desire for the beauty and the funness and the creativity and the spontaneity and the likeness of these socks. The far enemy, so the near enemy to metta is when the heart moves too close to something and then it shifts from being loving kindness to greed and grasping. My love of socks is so funny because I laugh at myself. Now if I was grasping and I couldn't have them, and then it's a whole different story. It's like, not that serious. They're socks. The far enemy of metta is anger. And when you're angry, you try to deal with it or try to remove it. But when you are delighting in something, your mind tends not to be clear enough to see that you have come too close to the object. So in terms of cultivating loving kindness, you have to know and be aware of these aspects that are related to and define the quality of metta, and to use them as boundaries to work within. And that's a quote by Gil Farnsdale. And what essentially, how I understand it is like, when I get upset, what is going on? Do I get a chance and an opportunity to explore it? I could be upset about something that's going on immediately, or if I take time to reflect, it could be something that was triggered the situation, but it could be something that has been going on for me and I need to take a moment to reflect on it. when I think about Trump's comment, I react. But then I react in terms of saying the first thing that comes to my mind that's not very skillful. But then if I sit there and think about it, I think about the times in my past growing up in Boston where the impact of what he said caused so much harm. And so there's a part of me that gets afraid, and I don't want to acknowledge that piece because I'm afraid that it can happen again. So even if he's not aware of the impact of what he said, I'm aware of how it lands for me. So if I'm angry and I move from a place of anger without having some understanding, I can cause harm to myself. But I can hold all of this complexity with loving kindness and with care and saying it's pretty mixed up, but I'm holding with kindness and with awareness of, okay, how do I want to deal with this? So anger can be a motivator to explore another part of how it lands for ourselves. And many of you know that we begin by practicing the meditation or loving kindness for ourselves. And we start with may I. And again, remember I said earlier about how language can harm, that if that doesn't feel comfortable to you, then please, please create phrases and words that work for you. Thich Nhat Hanh says, love is not just the intention to love, but the capacity to reduce suffering and offer peace and happiness. The practice of love increases our forbearance, our capacity to be patient and embrace difficulties and pain. And forbearance does not mean that we try to suppress pain. So even if in the midst of my own suffering, can I hold me with kindness and with care as I'm going through this anguish, and not judge it, not blame me, not compare, and say, this is how it is in this moment. This is what it is, which is equanimity. And holding myself with care in the midst of anguish brings in compassion. And after we begin this practice of loving kindness, of friendliness with ourselves, we can begin to practice it with others. And so today, when I go through the Brahma Viharas, I will offer you phrases first for ourselves and then for others. And you're more than welcome to do the research to find out all the different groups that you say the phrases for. It's very accessible online. It's accessible through Dharma Seed. It's accessible through Access to Insight. But for today, we're going to focus on ourselves and our beloved community. And through the beloved community, we extend it to the world. Dina Metzger says, there are those who are trying to set fire to the world. We are in danger. There is time only to work slowly. There is no time not to love. Offering it to ourselves. May I be peaceful. May I be happy and light in body and spirit. May I be safe and free from injury. May I be protected from inner and outer harm. May I learn to look at myself with the eyes of understanding and love. Walt Whitman says, may I be filled with loving kindness. I am larger, better than I thought. I did not know I held so much goodness. And you can take that phrase and then say, may you be filled with loving kindness. You are larger and better than you thought. You didn't know you held so much goodness. So we extend it from ourselves to someone else, to someone we care about, to a benefactor, to a stranger, to a loved one. We extend it to someone who's a difficult person, maybe that difficult part of ourselves. We extend it to a situation. Love springs up in tender concern. It blossoms into caring action. It makes beauty out of all we touch. In any movement, we can step beyond our small self and embrace each other as beloved parts of the whole, a whole, which is from Jack Kornfield. So there's always an acknowledgement and a weaving of the interconnection that is life. And we are all interconnected, and we are all interdependent. May I learn to identify and see the sources of anger, craving, and delusion in myself. May I know how to nourish these seeds of joy in myself every day. May I be able to live fresh, solid, and free. May I be free from attachment and aversion, but not indifferent. I'm loving this book, you see. I just can't find things when I need them. Now I just found the precepts. Okay. She says, may you be safe and well in the midst of this. May you be peaceful within this body. May you rest with ease and kindness in this moment. I love that one. May I rest with ease and kindness in this moment. She says, listen to life of your body, also sensing the places in your body that are at ease. Maybe the palm of your hands, the touch of your lips together, your ears. And with mindfulness, which is awareness, which is being right here, right now. Stand next to all that is well and free from pain and distress. In this landscape of sensation, the well and the difficult, the easeful and the challenging, begin to plant seeds of kindness and befriending. I remember when I first got introduced to loving kindness years and years and years ago. And when I first heard it, it landed like flat. You know, like that wall, it's like right, just landed flat. And it's like they gave these phrases. God bless Sylvia Borstein. She was like, she's so into it. And I was like, I am so not feeling this. What is this? And for the longest time, I could not connect with this. It didn't resonate. I'm like, you want me to say this for everybody? Oh, I don't think so. I didn't even like the phrases that they were using. For example, may I be safe. I'm like, what world do you live in? So let me tell you, I was not a happy camper. And it was like, I'm not doing this. And then I went and did a whole week-long retreat with Sharon Salzberg. And she is like the goddess of loving kindness. So at the end of the week, I was feeling it a little bit, but I'm still having a hard time with the phrases. May I be safe. I'm like, whatever. So I can't remember when it clicked, but someone said, I don't like these phrases. I thought, oh, that's not me talking. And she said, doesn't resonate. The may I, the safety, it's not my world. And I really appreciated how Sharon held it. And she said, well, make it yours, make it your own. And ever since that day, it started it shifted because I started using different language. And then when I started teaching it, especially with people of color, the, what do you call, not the fallback, the, whatever the word is,
The impact?
backlash. It's like safety, may I, language. You want me to say this to who and for what? I don't think so. I'm like, okay, this is my testing ground. So I'd switched up the language. I would ask someone, well, how would you say this phrase? And then they would say it. And I'm like, and I would have the whole group repeat it. And so what happened is that within that, the community right there, we created language that healed. We created a practice that was accessible and gave permission to just do it. So it's like a 12-step phrase where you say, fake it till you make it. There's another way of understanding that concept. When you are in school and you are learning something for the first time, remember how it was in second and third and fourth grade. The concepts are like bring you to tears. And when you're that little, you'll cry. When you get older, you fake it. You don't know what you're saying. You don't know what this means. You don't know how to use this. You don't understand the purpose of this. And you got to learn it and you got to pass. So what happens? You get repeat. You have repetition. You have different exercises that say the same thing, but a different way. And it's like every time you go in, it's like the same lesson, but in a different way. And then somewhere, somehow, it clicks. And then you have to get tested. And if you haven't studied, you're not going to get a good grade. But if you studied, you pass. Sometimes I was just like, please just pass me. That is building a capacity. That is building the muscle. So what Sylvia now talks about is loving kindness is friendliness. Christina says, you don't even have to like it. It is the intention which comes from the Eightfold Path. Wise intention and wise effort. So when you bring your intention and your effort to these well wishes, even if in the moment it's not sincere, the intention hopefully carries it. And then eventually, as that muscle gets built and that capacity is worked, the offerings become sincere. And they come freely. I'll sit on the BART now and I'll watch people on their phones and nobody's talking to each other. And I'm thinking, wow, this is a whole different world. And then I might think, may all beings put their phones down. No, may all beings be happy, or may all beings be well. Or like when I get in the car, I'll sit there for a minute and think about the drive and I'll say, may everyone be safe on the road. And I mean it. And what I think we forget is that when we offer this to all beings, we include ourselves. So the compassion and the kindness and the poignancy and the tenderness and the care that we might say a phrase, we're also including ourselves. But that's not what we think about and don't even know or remember that's part of it. And when you're learning the phrases and you're offering it to maybe a benefactor or a loved one or a stranger or a difficult person, all of those entities are in yourself. So that even if it's for someone else, at sometimes you can offer loving kindness to the situation at hand. And it doesn't have to be a person. Just to hold it. How can I hold this differently? I remember when I was in the hospital and I had woken up from a coma. And I knew what I came in the hospital for, but didn't know what had happened to cause me to be in the coma. And 3 weeks had gone by. I would think about practice and feel guilty because I wasn't practicing, right? Go figure. But I would think about phrases and I would think about the kindness and I would think about everybody taking care of me and everybody rooting for me to live. And I had so many different physicians coming in saying, do you know who I am? And I'm like, I just woke up. No. And it was like, you're a miracle. You're alive. And I'm clueless. But that warmth and that well wishes, and then the team and everyone working on to help make me stay alive, that's a practice of loving kindness, even if you don't use that language. The actions, the effort, the intention is what's manifested. And of course, in the medical field, the mantra is to cause no harm, to do no harm. But then there are those who take it a little further. And it's felt and appreciated and held, and it's resonated. So this is what loving kindness practice is. It's cultivating friendliness. It's cultivating well wishes for all life, in all directions, without exception. And there's a whole lot of stuff that we can be bent out of shape about, clearly. But what if we brought even a little bit of kindness to ourselves around struggling on how to hold that? And struggling with how do I make sense of that? Can I bring a little kindness there and not judge myself because I'm upset, or not judge myself because feelings of hatred come up or feelings of injustice come up? Can I just hold me with care? Pema Chodron says, may the wisdom and compassion of all beings increase, now and in the future. May we clearly see all the barriers we erect between ourselves and others to be as insubstantial as our dreams. May we continue to be open our hearts and minds in order to work ceaselessly for the benefit of all beings, all life. May we go to the places that scare us. May we lead the life of a warrior. So what just happened is a practice in our beloved community of compassion and care. Someone mentioned a need, someone didn't know, and people responded with care. To make a space for everyone to be here with no judgment, no blame, to hold us all. And as I was watching this process, I was so moved. And I realized that whenever I talk about compassion practice, because it is my practice, it is so moving to me. And different things bring tears to my eyes. And not just gestures of kindness, but I mean, I can come at the last 5 minutes of a movie and be crying. Don't know the whole movie at all, but because of what's conveyed, something is moved in me with empathy that allows that to come forth. And I just want to bow to all of you for your kindness and care in the presenting and in the receiving and in the holding. No one is turned away. And that's compassion. And that's embodying compassion. And that is the practice of compassion. So it happens unbeknownst to us all the time. Empathy and embodiment together are the nature of compassion. Empathy teaches us to listen to and understanding suffering and its causes. Embodiment is concerned with what to do with that understanding. So what do we do when we're so moved and we don't know what to do? Maybe the place to start is to feel. Just to be with what arises. With the hurricane and the feelings I have of not knowing what to do and can't do anything. can I just hold me being in that space? My grandson is going to school in the University of Miami, and he just started his first week and told his mom, I'm going to like it here. And I text him and I said, it'd be nice if you let your grandmother know how you are. And are you going to be going home because of the hurricane? He said, I'm on my way now. And then there's a young woman in this iteration of the Dedicated Practitioners Program, and she's in Florida right now with her family. And she sent a video of what they're doing to prepare. And my heart just goes out. And I think about when Katrina happened and the negligence and the pointing the fingers and blaming, and that everyone suffered. How do we hold those kind of complexities? Sometimes being able to do something, sometimes not being able to. Embodiment asks for courage. A compassionate life is a fearless life. It is courage that rescues compassion from being only a fine sentiment restricted to those who are helpless and innocent. It takes great courage to have compassion, to be the guiding principle of our thoughts, words, and acts. Courage is needed as mindfulness awakens us to the depth and apparent endlessness of suffering in the world. Remarkable courage is needed to stay close to the suffering that feels unbearable. Compassion in its deepest sense is immeasurable. It embraces the most difficult people, situations in our lives, the most brutal people in the world. Compassion is concerned with meeting suffering, in uprooting the causes of suffering, greed, hatred, and confusion, and that scars the lives and hearts of too many in this world. Dr. King reflected on his death and the manner of his funeral, asking that whomever delivered the eulogy should not talk too long. He said, tell them not to mention that I have a Nobel Peace Prize or 300 or 400 other awards. I'd like someone to mention that day that Martin Luther King tried to give his life serving others. I'd like for somebody to say that day that Martin Luther King tried to love somebody. Say that I was a drum major for justice, for peace, and for righteousness. And all of the other shallow things will not matter. Not the prize, not the awards, none of that. I just want to leave a committed life behind. Part of how to hold compassion is the power of forgiveness that we bring to our practice. Forgiveness is so essential in the practice of compassion. How do we hold when we can't figure things out? Where do we bring forgiveness? How do we forgive ourselves even when we don't know what to do? So forgiveness allows us to meet the suffering, our suffering as well as the suffering as others, with a kind heart. That's what Gina Sharp says. And El Shona Tova says, may we learn that justice without which there is no peace. May we learn compassion without which there is no justice. And John Donahue, the poet, says, I link compassion immediately with intimacy. Compassion is the ability to vitally imagine what it's like to be an other. The force that makes a bridge from the island of one individuality to the island of the other. It is an ability to step outside your own perspective, limitations, and ego, and become attentive in a vulnerable, encouraging, critical, and creative way within the hidden world of another person. One time I did an exercise, and it was around race and diversity issues. And I asked the people to answer the question, when you see me, what do you see? And later on some people said, I saw this beautiful, imagined, profound, wonderful woman. I'm still black. I'm still here. This is still my reality. So it's like, oh, I didn't see that. I don't see color. On one hand, there is truth to that. And then on another hand, it is a big dismissal. It is an othering. It is a negation. I am rendered invisible one more time. But it doesn't mean that that's all you hold. So in the complexity of compassion and the complexity of forgiveness, we get to meet where we are with care. And it is so hard sometimes not to even have compassion for ourselves, let alone others, but to forgive. To just be in that moment of forgiveness. Jack Kornfield says, forgiveness is giving up all hope of a better past. This is what it is. It ain't gonna be different. Keep hoping, keep dreaming. Go to sleep dreaming something different. Wake up, you're still here. Same stuff is going on. Can I be with that? Can you be with that? Compassion is our capacity to relate in a tender and sympathetic way to what we perceive. Instead of resisting our feelings of fear or grief, we embrace our pain with the kindness of a mother or a parent holding her child or their child. Compassion honors our experience. It allows us to be intimate with the life of this moment as it is. Now, it's Tara. She taught a group of us this wonderful way of practicing compassion. So I'm going to offer it to you right now. Just sit the way you are. You're welcome to this is the piece that I find so moving. You can put your hands on your lap. You can put your hands on your heart. But the what is it? The gold in this is the phrase of how you hold yourself in this practice. And so there is examples like how you would say to someone you care about, my darling, precious one, my beloved. My granddaughter calls me Boo, so don't use that one. But whatever it is, so you could say, my precious, and then say your name, my precious Shahara. I care. I care about the suffering. May there be ease in this suffering. My darling, I care. Beloved, may there be ease with this suffering. To just say, I care, is a practice. Sometimes you can't even get that out. It's okay. In this moment, as it is right now, it's okay. And sometimes that's all I can put together. So the invitation is always to create your own phrases. What brings you ease? May you find peace. May you be safe. May you be protected. May you be touched with kindness. May I find healing. May I find peace in this moment. May I rest in care and compassion. And then you can change it and say, may you find care and compassion. Developing compassion is not a tool to remove the suffering, but rather a way of developing a relationship with the suffering. Okay, so if you're doing the compassion practice and you're moving into this place of thinking or wanting to have some forgiveness with an issue, don't go for in the range of 1 to 10, 10 plus on the areas of where there's suffering. Maybe just focus on a little bit of hurt and just be with that. And sometimes what will happen is as you're doing this practice, a big hurt will come in. And maybe Spirit's saying that that's where your attention needs to be. And if so, you practice turning to the quality of a loving heart towards what is painful. I see you suffering. I know that this is painful. I care. And so what I find is I sit with the suffering as much as I can tolerate, and then I ease back. I'm not trying to be a saint. I gave that one up a long time ago. I mean, Catholic school, they do this number on you, but the saint thing wasn't happening. So what I'm saying is be kind to yourself. Don't be a martyr. Just say, this is all I can hold for now, and that's okay. That is care. That is being compassionate. That's self-compassion. That's saying, I care about this pain. This is all I can do for now. May I be okay in this moment. May I accept things as they are. That is care. That is compassion. It is not a secret path to relieve the pain or fix it, but to be part of the spacious heart of compassion that says, this too, and this too, and this too. Power without love is reckless and abusive, and love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power at its best is love, implementing the demands of justice. And justice at its best is power, correcting everything that stands against love. Dr. King is deep, y'all.
Wow, that's deep. We should write that up there.
Also, love is the practice of capacity building and moving towards the ability to action. So it's not just, when we talk about verbs, we have passive verbs and we have active verbs. Love is not a passive verb. And love is not only a noun, but it's a verb of action. Sharon Salzberg says, sometimes we think that to develop an open heart, to be truly loving and compassionate, means that we need to be passive, to allow others to abuse us, to smile, and let anyone do what they want with us. This is not what is meant by compassion. Quite the contrary. Compassion is not at all weak. Kuan Yin, and one of the images of Kuan Yin is with a sword. And what she does is she comes down with that sword and she cuts through all delusions. And she's like, oh no, not here. This stops right now. Get a grip, okay? Don't get it twisted. It is the strength that arises out of seeing the true nature of suffering in the world and the true nature of suffering in our own life, and how trauma can be intergenerational. And on the way over here, Jenn and I were talking, and I was saying that one of the gifts that Obama gave to the black community and to all little boys of color as the reality that they could do what he did, regardless of where they came from. So regardless of where you are about what he did and didn't do, what he gave to my community is part of that intergenerational healing, and that it can be different, and that young black men are not expendable, that they are part and parcel of this community, and that all life matters. And for that, I will always be internally grateful for the gift that he's given. I have 5 brothers, and there's nothing that can be said about that. That is such deep compassion and deep, deep giving. Compassion allows us to bear witness to that suffering. And he knows, and this is what he gave. He led by example. Whether it is in ourselves or others, without fear. It allows us to name injustice without hesitation and to act strongly with all the skill at our disposal. To develop this mind state of compassion is to learn to live. And I will add, to learn to live with dignity, regardless of the situation. As the Buddha put it, with sympathy for all living beings. And I will add, all life, without exception. So this is what compassion is about. And we have this opportunity in our practice to do this all the time. Sometimes we do it with intention. Sometimes we do it without. And so many different things can move us. I was in the post office yesterday, and this young woman came in with her little girl. And I love when some of the moms dress the little girls and they look like each other. And she had on, this little top that was sand beach something, so it was all about the summer. This little girl had her arm around her mom's leg so tight. I didn't know this child could move or not, because when she had to move, she had to drag her because the baby wasn't letting go. And then she would just look at me and hold on to her mom and look at me, and I just smiled, and it just felt so loving. And I said to the mom, she ain't going nowhere. And she started laughing. But it was so sweet, that moment. That is kindness. That is tenderness. That is understanding the universality of being a parent. And just saying, this is how she is. This is how it is. Compassion can bring us to our knees and beg for mercy with our own suffering and not knowing how to get out of it and forgetting all the tools and forgetting all the practice, because the suffering is so great that there's no language that can bear the suffering and experience of that pain. And then sometimes you get to remember, in the moment, I am being held at this time. Kuan Yin is holding me, the Buddha, and all my ancestors, and I am not alone. I remember when I was in the hospital sometimes, I would just sit there, or lay there most of the time, and say, I can't bear this. I don't know what happened. I can't bear this. And I begged for the tears to come. And they wouldn't come, and I'm like, what else do I need to happen? And I just would say, I can't bear this. And then a moment later I would think, and I would say, I'm okay in this moment. I'm okay. And then I can't bear this. And both are true. And what compassion allows us is to hold that complexity and to remind ourselves not to judge it, not to blame it, not to criticize and make ourselves our own enemy. We don't do this to children when they beat up on themselves. We're like, oh no, honey, that's not true. You're this wonderful person. I remember I was teaching kindergartners mindfulness, and this little boy said, he was kindergarten, he said, my mom says my brain is something. And I looked at him, I said, no, honey, your brain is wonderful. It's helping you. And he just burst into this big smile because I gave him something a little different. I said, maybe that's how he feels in that moment. But that's not true. And what I would do with the children, I would say, let's give ourselves a hug. And they would just wrap themselves around. And then I say, and for this moment, just hold yourself as tightly as possible and just, I love you. And I'm all that matters. And you're so important. And look at somebody else and just smile. And then they would all just burst into giggles. This is compassion too. So compassion's not always about it being hard, but it's the balm. It's the balm that gives us mercy. It is the balm that is grace. It is the balm that says we can get through this. And when we look at history and look at intergenerational trauma, we can name different periods of time and situations and individuals who are like that North Star that said, we can get through this. We have suffered immeasurable sorrow, and we can get through this. So this is what compassion does for us. It gives us a way to hold this. And then as we hold and understand our own suffering, oh, maybe I get to know a little bit of what it might be like for you. I'm not going to sit up here and say, I know what your experience is like. That's insulting. But I can hold and say, I care. I care about this pain. May there be ease in your suffering. It's like this tenderness that gets to be cultivated. So all these Brahma Viharas are about building capacity, like, building your heart muscle. And it's building it to expand and to hold. I mean, this phrase that God never gives you anything you can't handle. Mm-hmm. Be careful what you ask for. I don't even say that anymore. Nope, I'm not even going to try that. Because God will say, oh, you haven't had enough? Let me help you a little bit more. Let me see what else you can do. And I'm like, nah, those words do not come out my mouth. Because that is about a capacity building. So when Spirit adds more strife, and you're like, oh, what else? What else? It's a capacity building. Yes, you're going to get the tools and the resources to help you with whatever's going on, but in an emotional place, in a place that has no language, it is about grace. It is about mercy. It is about kindness. It is about tenderness. It is about care. For the alleviation of all suffering. When I think about this hurricane and what's been happening in the earth, she's just letting you know, y'all, I'm done. I am done. And so I'm going to level the playing field, period. All life. I don't care about trees, plants, color, homes, all of it. You're going to pay attention. You're going to listen. And if this is the cost, that's not on me. I am doing what I do naturally. And I am bringing balance in here. And there is suffering. And changes will happen. But this is about life. This is about love. This is about balance. This is about harmony. So compassion is fierce. You got to have a whole lot of courage to want to do this one. And it's okay if you just want a little bit of courage. You don't have to take on the world. You can just say, let me just be with my stuff. Or can I hold my stuff a little differently? Or can I hold my beloved stuff a little differently? Can I hold my parents' stuff a little differently? Can I hold my sister? Or whomever you're in. You know, our families are some of our greatest teachers and our greatest practice. Can I be with that practice with kindness, with care, with mercy? Even though I lose my mind and say the wrong things, I still come back to, I'm committed to working with this. I'm committed to you. I care. I'm willing to go through this again, but in a different way. So we learn skills. Compassion is fierce. It asks all of us to be a warrior in our own way. In whatever way we can do that. If it's just a little, that's a little warrior. If it's a little more, that's a little more warrior. Then if you go, that's a huge warrior. Whatever your capacity is. And it changes moment to moment to moment. May the wisdom and compassion of all beings increase, now and in the future. May we clearly see all the barriers we erect between ourselves and others to be as insubstantial as our dreams. May we continue to open our hearts and minds in order to work ceaselessly for the benefit of all beings. May we go to the places that scare us. May we lead the life of a warrior. That's Pema Chodron. So I'm going to end this talk with just a few phrases of metta. And so just sit comfortably and let your eyes close. If the phrases resonate, cool. If they don't, then you can just substitute your own. May we all be protected from inner and outer harm. May we love and be loved. May we live with ease and well-being. And may we be free from suffering and its causes and conditions. And let that just settle in and float down into your heart space and hold you like the most precious being that you are. We look for joy in relationships, in nature, in meditation, and in play. It doesn't only gladden our hearts, it brings meaning and intimacy to the fabric of our lives. But sometimes you can miss those blessings when your mind is contracted with stress or filled with negativity. There's no room for them to enter. But the moment you pause and let yourself notice something you're grateful for, even in the midst of a challenge, it's virtually impossible to continue to be lost in worrying about the future or regret about the past. One Tibetan Lama says gratitude is like a satellite dish. When we feel grateful, our receptors are wide open to receive the abundance available to us. The very act of appreciating someone or something instantly calls forth joy. Let's try it right now. Think of someone or something you feel grateful for, and notice what happens. It is impossible to feel genuinely grateful and not have a little rise of joy. In this definition, being happy with someone's fortunate or happiness. Sympathetic joy here refers to the potential of bliss and happiness for all sentient beings. The near enemy is hypocrisy or affectation, and the opposite is jealousy, when one cannot accept the happiness of others. By rejoicing in others' progress on the spiritual path, one can actually share in their positive karma. And this is from Awakening Joy, 10 Steps to Happiness by James Baraz and Shoshana Alexander. He also offers an online course for Awakening Joy. And it helps to really, well, when I took the course, I really got to explore the nuances and understand that even in the midst of such difficulty and pain, glimpses of joy can happen. I know when I was diagnosed with cancer, and then when I went through treatment and everything, and now I can step back, I can step and look at it, that happened to me. I would not wish cancer on anybody. But I would say that it really gave me another way of holding life and appreciating life. And that even in the midst of all that suffering, there were moments of happiness. Go figure. I didn't know that. And it did happen. So if we can, if we allow ourselves to know that even in the midst of the suffering, joy arises. And in the midst of joy, we can get in a funk or feel down and then forget we even were happy. So it's a balancing act here. Be grateful for your life, every detail of it, and your face will come to shine like a sun, and everyone who sees it will be made glad and peaceful. Persistent gratitude, and you will slowly become one with the sun of love, and love will shine through you. It's all healing joy. And that's paraphrased from Rumi, from Andrew Harvey's Light Upon Light. And Mark Nepo says, the key to knowing joy is being easily pleased. I want to acknowledge Christina Feldman's new book. It's been a delight to read from. She's helped me understand the Brahma Viharas in a deeper way and really give language to some of the ways of understanding sympathetic joy, for example, that I never thought about before. She says, contentment is one of the key cornerstones of joy. So much of life is spent leaning forward into the next moment with our plans, our anticipations, and our expectations. We wait for one thing to be over so the next thing can happen. So we're not even right with the experience. It's like sometimes when you're walking down the street, you're not really paying attention. You know you have to go somewhere and you're trying to get there, but you're not paying attention to, I'm putting my foot down, I'm lifting up my foot, I'm placing it, until you get to a red light. Then you have to stop. But then you don't think about just taking a moment to reflect on where you were and where you are right now. So when something happens, one of the beauties about walking meditation is you get to experience that. You get to be in that moment. just with the lifting, rising, and placing of the feet. Simple joy. Momentum and drive are seen to give meaning to life. And our hopes and dreams capture our attention, and we live and wait for future joy. Contentment we may see as the reward for filling our desires and the multiplicity of needs that haunt our lives. A contented heart is a heart that is in peace with itself. The circumstances and conditions of our lives do not have to be perfect for us to know contentment. The art of resting within what is. And that's how joy and equanimity sort of like lead into each other. Because when you're with equanimity, you're accepting this is what it is in this moment, without attachment, without longing, without greed, without grasping, without aversion. This is what it is right now. I may not like it, but this is what it is right now. The equanimity allows us to see things impartially. With equanimity, we are no longer pulled this way and that by our passions, likes and dislikes. Thich Nhat Hanh says that the Sanskrit word upekkha means equanimity, non-attachment, non-discrimination, even-mindedness, or letting go. Upa means over, and ekka means to look. You climb the mountain to be able to look over the whole situation, not bound by one side or the other. And you're just looking and you're seeing this is what it is right now. We work so hard to get somewhere, to realize a dream, to arrive at some destination that we often forget that though some satisfaction may be waiting at the end of our endurance and effort, there's great and irreplaceable aliveness in the steps along the way. Mark Nepo. Equanimity, which means even-mindedness, gives to love even an unchanging firmness and loyalty. And here again, equanimity means patience, the patient devotion to the work of compassion. I use this letting go practice because equanimity is letting go. It's accepting of what is, and just letting go of what you want it to be, without the attachment or the longing. Can I just be here in this moment? And it helps me to cultivate the mental calmness and evenness of temperament that are the heart of equanimity. If I can't let go a lot, I let go a little. And if I can't let go even a little, I do it with compassion for myself. Let it be. And things change so that I can let go a little. They may not change as fast as I want them to, like I'd want them to move faster than they are, but they change. And we all are familiar with impermanence. Everything changes. And once you clearly see through illusions, they drop away, and clarity and insight arises. And in that moment, there's a potential for freedom and liberation or awareness. Letting go does not mean not caring about things. It means caring for them in a flexible and wise way. And Jack Kornfield says that. Equanimity is truly unconditional love, a fierceness that invites the possibility of liberation. It's the removal of craving and aversion, which are barriers. The capacity to truly receive unconditional love is the practice of equanimity. And another way to describe this is unconditional love is agape, which is a friend to equanimity. They coexist in harmony and balance. Dr. King defines agape as more than romantic love. It is more than friendship. Agape is understanding, creative, redemptive goodwill toward all people. Agape is an overflowing love which seeks nothing in return. He says, I refuse to accept the view that mankind is so tragically bound to the starless midnight of racism and war that the bright daybreak of peace and brotherhood can never become a reality. I believe that unnamed truth and unconditional love will have the final word. Life will break you, and nobody can protect you from that. And living alone won't either, for solitude will also break you with its yearning. You have to love. You have to feel. It is the reason you are here on earth. You are here to risk your heart. And that's Louise Edridge. Equanimity's near enemy is indifference. Instead of releasing attachment to a preference of how we want things to be, when we are indifferent, we are detached from the way things are. It is the quality of apathy that pretends not to care. So to say it doesn't bother me or I don't care, there's not a sense of a balance there. It's an aversion. It's a pushing away because I don't want to experience it. I don't want to be with it. And I know when I shared earlier when I was talking about growing up, those experiences were real. And I couldn't avoid them because I didn't have a choice. But now I can move into situations where I don't have to have it right in my face. So yes, there's still a tendency to have aversion. Yet I'm aware of what I'm doing now, and it's a choice. And some of that's around my own self-care. The far enemy of equanimity is restlessness or agitation. As we cling desperately to the way we want things to be, we try to push away the things we don't want. So it's like, oh, I fell in love and I adore this person and I want this experience to last forever. And then one day you wake up and it's like, oh my God, the honeymoon is over. What did I get myself into? This is not what I signed up for. But are you being realistic about being with what is and not how you want it to be? And grasping and holding and clinging to, I want it to stay this way. I think we all have had moments of that. I know when I was in LA, I went to Pasadena and they had this ice cream place where they used nitrogen or something. Oh my God, it's the best ice cream I ever had. I had never had anything like that before. And I definitely wanted some more. And I thought, wow, I can eat ice cream all the time now. Because it was so good, you know, and it's like that first time you have it, you want it again, and you want it again. Okay, some of that's craving. Could I just be with appreciating how good it was for right then? So the next time I went to LA, I went to Pasadena, and I went to it again. And it wasn't the same, but it still had the enjoyment of that sensation. I think I was just as enamored with their process than I was just with the ice cream. But it was such a pleasurable experience. Do I crave it and long for it and can't live without it? Not even close. But sometimes that can happen to people. And the Buddha described a mind filled with equanimity as abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and ill will. Equanimity, as I've said before, defines things as seeing things as they are. And I experience it as one of the most sublime, awe-inspiring, Drop to your knees and give praise. Humble me, emotions of the Buddhist practice. It is the ground for wisdom and freedom and the guardian angel of compassion and love. Equanimity is a perfect, unshakable balance of mind, rooted insight, looking at the world around us and looking into our own heart. We can clearly see how difficult it is to attain and maintain a balance of the mind. So some of the phrases you might use with this particular practice are, may I embrace change with stillness and calm. May I deeply accept this moment as it is. May my home be a home of balance and spaciousness. And that doesn't necessarily mean a physical place. That can be this vessel we carry and how we walk in the world. May this be a place of spaciousness. May we hold ourselves this way. So there's a poem by Lucille Clifton, African-American woman who used to be the Poet Laureate of D.C. And it's called At St. Mary's. And I want to share this poem because there's a way she exemplifies equanimity and balance. Before I do that, Bodhipasca said, equanimity is strength. Equanimity is a courageous stance which is able to accept that which it cannot change. It does not fear discomfort nor seek immersion in pleasure. It doesn't fear change. Pleasures and discomforts come and they go, like winds blowing around a rock. At St. Mary's, may the tide that is entering even now the lip of our understanding carry you out beyond the face of fear. May you kiss the wind, then turn from it, certain that it will love your back. May you open your eyes to water, water waving forever. And may you, in your innocence, sail through this to that. Thank you for your kind attention.